to season one of Undefeated. I'm your host, Bree Franklin, and we are back for a specialty Friday the 13th episode where we'll be talking about student debt shame. What's spookier than that, right? So, if you missed it, last week we kicked off with our first guest, Nika Booth, aka Debt Free Gonna Be, who is a boss that has paid off over 200 grand in student debt. So, if you missed that conversation, please be sure to check out our YouTube channel and go back get the full conversation. We also kicked it off with a nod to the now deceased Jessica Madison, who, if you don't know, is a young woman who sadly lost her life due to being debt constrained. So, in last week's episode, Nika and I got into what it means to be debt constrained, how we even define that, how that plays out in real time and in real lives and in real ways. So for this week, we're going to continue to build on that theme and specifically look at student debt, right? So when you take on debt, there's so many forms that it can come in. It can be a car loan, it can be a mortgage, it can be credit cards, it can be buy now, pay later. Today, we're going to focus specifically on higher education debt and what that looks like. And the reason why I and my team are so passionate about addressing this issue is because my pursuit of a higher education backfired dramatically in my life. So, if you don't already know, my story is that I came out of school. I attended Dartmouth College, class of 2017. I graduated with 100K in student debt principal. And within just a few years' time, 2 years to be exact, that number had crept up to $116,000 in student loan debt. And that was because of interest, but also ignorance, because I really didn't know what I had signed myself up for. I was completely naive while a teenager and early 20 something filling out those paperwork documents every single school year. And it caught up with me and was very difficult to navigate through. So, as with all of our guests, we try to make sure that we select people to join these conversations with intention and who can add their own layer of relatability and shared struggle to the conversation. So it was just a no brainer when I was going through and deciding of our collaborators and those who have expertise in the space and those who are also doing something actionable about it. So for today, I've chosen Tanya Menendez, who is the incredible co founder and CEO of an app called Snowball Wealth. And this platform provides personalized guidance to address money anxieties, pay off debt, and help you build wealth. Through their tech and coaching, they provide members with a clear plan on how to get out of debt, as well as the habits and the mindset shifts that they need to stay debt free. But then, third, they also are a community that allows you to connect with others because like they say, it takes a village. So, being able to have that sense shared of community along the way is a huge asset that enhances the value that they bring. Before Snowball, Tanya co founded Maker's Row, which is an online marketplace used by over 200,000 businesses that helped to democratize American manufacturing. And before becoming an entrepreneur, she actually worked at Goldman Sachs and Google. She has been named a Forbes 30 under 30 list maker and has been named Business Insider's coolest people in tech and one of Pop Mechanic's 25 makers who are reinventing the American dream. Tanya studied technology and its socioeconomic impacts on rural economies at UC San Diego. Her ethnography and research, the economics, wow, so many X tripping me up, of migration was published by the University of California. And in her spare time, Tanya manages a Women of Color in Tech group, runs half marathons, and enjoys time with her dog, Mr. Pickles. What a cute name. So excited to have you with us. Good morning and welcome to Undefeated, Tanya.
Good morning. It was so wonderful to be here, and I'm so glad we're covering this topic.
Yes, I couldn't be more excited. I mean, you and I have had many conversations formally and sidebars, right, around this shared theme that brings us together, a different type of trauma bonding, right, if you will. Because student debt is no joke and it has so many implications. So if you would just start us off, share with us your student debt story and what drew you to take action and be such a cemented part of this cause.
Yeah, I graduated college in 3 years. I was first, my sister and I were like the first in our families to go to college and to enroll, and so I approached higher education a bit naive as well. Your story really resonated with me. I remember not really fully understanding student loans when I was taking them out. You know, the language was confusing, understanding how much exactly to take out. You know, having to research that on your own can feel daunting.
Mhm.
And I remember having that feeling, and I had this mindset around I just wanted to take out as low as the lowest amount of debt possible because I was afraid, right? I was afraid of not being able to afford the payments. And so I ended up graduating college in 3 years because I was so afraid of, taking on more debt.
Wow.
And so I really wish I had stayed that 4th year because I missed out on the full college experience. You know, a lot of my friends were able to study abroad and they had all of these other experiences together.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, I started working, early on, and um while that did help me financially, you miss out on these life experiences. And it's one of those things where, I wish I had, had the freedom and like the foresight to see debt more as a tool
Mhm.
and less like something that was scary and intimidating or anything else like that. And so after my second company, I set out to really create an app that helps people understand the steps to build wealth. But what I noticed was that debt was a big blocker because the majority of Gen Z and millennial, when they graduate college, they're thinking about debt first. They're not thinking about how do I invest. They're thinking like, how do I make these debt payments? How do I start building up a savings? And so we took a more practical approach to building an app and just focused in on what are people worried about the most right now, and
Mhm.
how can we solve that, and how can we make people feel more confident around their finances. And it starts with really having a good understanding of where you're at, and having more confidence around making these debt decisions, because sometimes people could delay buying a home because they have student debt, when that's not necessarily the case. You can purchase a home while you have student debt. You don't have to delay some of these big life choices. It's just about understanding how to manage it.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's a bit about my debt story and a bit about my motivation around starting Snowball too.
That's a beautiful story. And I think, and I actually didn't know that you had sped through college intentionally to avoid that 4th year of tuition. And my heart goes out because I didn't do it for the same reason. Like I finished just a term early, so I was effectively there for 4 years. But that wasn't even top of mind. Sadly, like I didn't even have an appreciation while a student. The most insight I had was just this is going to be bad. Like I remember being a junior
Yeah,
getting on the phone with the financial aid office. It was just a merry-go-round every single term. And
yeah,
they were like, just so you know, like you're borrowing on the heavier side. And I'm thinking, y'all are the one who set these astronomical prices. Like, I'm just trying to stay here and get this degree. But
yeah.
I didn't at all look at the actual numbers and start to think about a repayment plan, let alone a strategy. So
Mhm.
I just, like I said, the only thing I knew in my gut to be true is this is going to be bad. I don't know when or how bad, but this is not a good track to go down. So in terms
Yeah.
of how that was like received, if you even had these conversations with family,
Mhm.
you speak to that interpersonal element and just if you had to clue people in and whether
Mhm.
they understood or were sensitive to that.
Yeah, and I think that the way you described it is such a common experience for people, right? Like it's this feeling of uncertainty, of not knowing, of like knowing that you have to go to college, but not knowing how bad it's going to be after you graduate and what the repercussions are. And I think that feeling of uncertainty and almost fear around that, around your student loans, is such a common experience that I've seen, across the board. And for some people, I think that what part of why I think student loans in particular is, um, provokes this feeling is because we don't really inform, young people about this.
Right.
There's no financial education around this. We now are actually partnering with high schools and school districts to provide some of this financial guidance in high schools before you go to college now. So we just got our first school contract. It's going to be launching uh, later this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. Um, but yeah, I think that this type of feeling that it provokes in college, while you're in college is extremely common. In our community, we interviewed Maria. She gave us permission to share her story, and it's on YouTube. But she was sharing where when she graduated, she had to take out federal and private student loans. And
Mm,
some of the private student loan interest rates were extremely high. And some of these private loans don't have the same federal benefits. So her monthly payments were close to $2,000 a month,
mm.
which for most people, that's their entire paycheck or their entire, like
Or
that's,
more than they even have.
or sometimes even more, right? And so it's really scary when there's these companies that force you to pay. There's no, break that you're getting from this. And so it puts a lot of people in a difficult position. And so with her in particular, we helped her, think about refinancing, because refinancing your private loans makes a lot of sense. Whereas when it comes to federal loans, now there's a lot of really great federal programs that exist,
Mhm.
but it's really confusing on how to navigate it. And even when you go in and you try to understand, like, does it make sense for me to do the new save plan or to pay it off in the standard way?
Mhm.
Doing these calculations can be really complex. So, we took the time on our platform to explain the differences between these plans to help people understand how to start thinking about, your student loan repayment plan, so that you can just feel more in control and less like, oh my gosh, this is something that's overwhelming and I need to like eventually take care of it. So, yeah.
And I'm bewildered by the fact that the number you mentioned specifically that she was paying was $2,000, because 2 days ago, so I have personally refinanced my private loans, and I
Mhm.
went the federal loan because, like you just spoke to, there are a lot more benefits and there's a lot more flexibility and leniency with those guys. Private is a totally different animal, and Sally Mae specifically, who I will curse until the day I die, that was my most traumatic financial encounter, was being
Mhm.
on the hook for variable rate loans that I didn't even understand I'd signed myself
Oh
up
my
for.
gosh.
So I consolidated those at the highest end. One crept up from 5 to 11.75%. And then
Whoa.
rolling those over though into a refi platform, I saw the other day the breakdown of my account, because I was like, okay, their shtick is, well, you're both paying down your debt and also investing.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a nice sound to it, but in practice, like the way that they have intentionally set it up, it still totally is meant to make them money and not, help look out for the intention and the financial future of the client. So that's a whole other another
Mm,
episode. But in any case,
yeah.
bring this up because I looked at that breakdown, because I'm like, okay, I've been with them now for a year. Let's see how I'm doing. Of the $2,000 that I paid them for this month towards that, I knew it was, some goes into the loan bucket, some goes into
Mhm.
the wealth building bucket. About 1,700 went towards wealth, which I'm like, that I can't be too mad at. However, when you look at how much went to the loan, 230 went to interest, and left over for principal was just $63.39 out of.
Wow.
And I'm like, when you do that math, I wouldn't be surprised if that puts me on pace to be totally debt free from this specific loan in my 80s. Right? Like $60 against 50,000 that they took over. Come the f on. So
Yeah.
it just that it got me angry all over again. But I just remember that living this experience gives me exposure to so many different ways
Yeah.
that this can go, right? And being able to relate and better empathize,
Yeah.
and build community. So I guess just to segue then from that piece of the conversation, as I
Yeah.
mentioned in your bio, one of the hugest benefits of Snowball and what you all offer is the fact that you're bringing people together. So can you share
Mhm.
how that has led to increased growth and user success for those who are in the Snowball community, and
Mhm.
just differentiating yourselves by not making this a every person for themselves solo mission?
Thank you for bringing that up. And I meant to close the loop on Maria. So when she refinanced, her payment went from 2,000 a month to 1,000 a month, which was huge, right? Like cutting those payments in half can be the difference between you being able to make rent and not make rent, right? And so,
Amen.
um, And so I'm really happy that she was able to have that sort of relief. And the other point that I want to make here for those that are struggling with their loans is that you don't have to take an all or nothing approach to it. So you can refinance a portion of them. Maybe you refinance only your private loans and you keep your federal loans federal. Those are all options for you. So just wanted to make sure that everyone had an understanding that like they have options when it comes to these things. It's about understanding them. But yeah, to going into your question, money is this notoriously taboo topic. And especially debt carries a lot of shame. It carries anxiety. Many people, their approach to their debt has been avoiding it, right? The most common feeling that people do is just like, I don't want to think about it. I
Yeah.
don't out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that you're letting things happen to you, right? You're letting it happen to you. And really, you want to confront it. You want to take a position of power when it comes to your money. And you want to be able to be intentional about what you're doing and face whatever reality there is, right? And it's difficult to do. It's much more difficult to say, right? It's easier for me to sit here and say, just face it, than to in practice when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling anxious. Like it's very, very difficult to face it. And so, what the community does is make these experiences less, less anxiety driven. You're not feeling as alone when it comes to this. And you realize that 45 million people across the country are feeling this a similar way.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, look, I'm not the only one, like, why am I feeling a shame around this? Like, everyone else has this as well. And when everyone starts to talk about it and kind of express how they're also feeling anxious about it, how they're also confused, you realize that you're like, I'm actually not the crazy one here. I'm not the only one on the phone with my servicer for like 2 hours and frustrated and feeling defeated. And like, I'm not the only one. And that feeling of knowing that like, I'm not the only one. It's them, it's just not society's problem, but it's like the institutionalized issues that exist. It's not something that I did wrong. Right. And like, I think removing some of that self shame is super powerful. Beginning to see things for what they are and not placing judgment on yourself or on others is extremely powerful in a way to be able to take action. So what we've seen, and this happened, really during the pandemic, where we saw that people just wanted to start talking about these things, right? Like people are feeling alone, they're feeling overwhelmed, like payments are paused, but like there's all of this uncertainty, there's all of this kind of angst that like you start to feel better when you start talking to other people and you start feeling less alone. So it was really, really interesting to see that. And like, I've always known that community is powerful, right? Because I've started these like mini communities with manufacturing. That's how I started my last company. It was very community oriented. I started the Women of Color in Tech here in the Bay Area. So I knew that, bringing people together was powerful, but I didn't realize how powerful it would be in reducing that shame and reducing that anxiety when it comes to finances. And it was really wonderful to see sort of the kind of freedom that came about from that of like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'm not the only one. I can do this. If Rosie did it, I can do it. If Maria did it, I can do it. And like that feeling has been really cool to witness.
Yeah. And that's, I think, such a beautiful thing of how it all comes full circle, because I am totally of when one of us wins, we all win. Like, I don't think there's any room for individualism here and always being in that ultra competitive, like, ugh, you did it and now you're my enemy, or I'm resentful of you. I admit, I think I was a little bit like that at first because it felt so impossible. Because I'm like,
Mhm.
why are you more favored by the Almighty? Why are you more blessed to where you get to walk away and I still have to question how I'm going to afford groceries because my burden hasn't moved and is only multiplied?
Yeah.
So as I've matured though, and as I've come to be in a position to take action, I think there's empowerment in that. It's really helped melt and soften my mindset and really embrace like a win for one of us against this issue is a win for all of us, because it shows that we can't be kept down, right? And I think also I'd love to get into as far as how this plays out in conversation, because I don't know about you, but it's been so personal for me that I have been very much at odds with people when I hear them say things like, "Oh, well, student debt is good debt." and they're just like completely clueless because they don't realize how awful it can be. So I realize it's a spectrum and that it isn't always the devil. Sometimes you really can just have 10,000, 12,000 in loans and work and pay it down. But for those who are debt constrained, it's a source of trauma. And so I really want to take this moment to please caution anybody who has not lived it. Be so careful. You know,
Yeah.
when you try to tell a person they should be glad they went through this, because it just, you don't realize the extent to which it can completely upend someone's livelihood, and that leaves lasting scars. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear your weigh in on that whole angle of student debt is good debt and how that makes you feel personally.
I mean, I think that, I it's difficult because I see debt as a tool, right? That's how I see debt. It's a tool. I try to take a more neutral stance on it, right? Because like I don't, I also, in some communities and in the Latino community too, we see that a lot of people don't go to college because they don't want to take out debt,
Hmm.
right? And so, like, we also don't want people to be so afraid of it that they don't go to college, right? Or that it limits their choices. So I think that it's a big balance of calling it good debt or bad debt. I see it very neutrally. It's like a tool, right? It's a tool that you have to respect, that you have to like understand on both sides, right? And like I think that for people that don't have to take on debt, um, having a lot of empathy for those that do have to, I think is really really important. Um, and then I think that instead of placing judgment or like even having an opinion on it, just trying to have an understanding
Yeah.
of where that person is coming from, because especially student debt is one of those things that people take out student debt in order to better themselves, right? We're taking this out because we have this hope that we are able to then have a little bit more freedom in our career choices. We hope that, this is going to put us in a better position. I think everyone that I've spoken to that's taken out student debt has taken it out for the right reasons.
Right.
And I think that it's really disheartening to see people having that discourse on Twitter. I've seen it on Twitter or Instagram
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're blaming people, right? They're saying that, and then I love this, the way that people the way that it was described in one of the news. It was like the toddler syndrome of like, especially when it came to student loan forgiveness, there was
Interesting.
always this take around like, if I can't have it, you can't have it either.
Right.
This feeling of like, I couldn't have student loan forgiveness, I had to pay it off on my own, so that means everyone else should too. When like,
I had to suffer, so you should suffer too.
yeah, and that's like the toddler mentality. It's like a very like one, it's like a very, obviously it comes from scarcity. It comes from this like a sort of envy around this, right? But like it doesn't really help the discussion, right? So who does it help that like you bring everyone else down with you? Like that doesn't, that's not a healthy way to see, these issues. And so I think that understanding it and taking it from a standpoint of like, we want progress for the next generation. We want the next generation to suffer less, right? Like, why do we want people to suffer more or like just as much as we did? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I think that, those types of discussions are disheartening. And we've seen that play out in these lawsuits that were successful in like challenging the student loan forgiveness.
Hmm.
And that I think is the most frustrating part of the whole public discussion around that, is like this feeling that we shouldn't make progress because other people, didn't get to benefit in the past. It's like, okay, well then does that, you can apply that to everything and like then we won't make progress on anything. And like so I think that is one of the more, that's the discussion that I have a lot of issues with. And that, but yeah, I wanted to make sure to share that, I don't want people to come away from this conversation afraid of debt, because I think debt should be seen as a tool. We see it for mortgages. You see, Trump obviously has, or like there's been people that have used it and like gone bankrupt multiple times, and see it as a tool and have zero shame around that.
Right.
And so I think that making sure that we see it as a tool, that we begin to have a healthy discourse around it, I think is my hope in all of this. And so thank you for starting these conversations too, and removing some of that shame around that.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate you saying so. And to bite the quote that I've seen circulating from Ann Voskamp, I mean, she said it best. Shame
Yeah.
dies when stories are told in safe spaces. Like that's really
Mhm.
the mantra, right? You saw in our marketing materials, like we've adopted that because I feel like if we're ever going to make it out of this moment and if we're going to turn the tide, if we're going to scale the solution across generations, we've got to be able to talk about it. Like we
Mhm.
can't fix what you won't face, I believe is a James Baldwin quote. And I
Yeah.
think that that applies here more than in any context I could ever think of because this is such a big obstacle in a lot of people's lives. And because it does have such an array of adverse effects or just, effects at all. And I think we have to be able to at least step one, just be able to put vocabulary to it,
Mhm.
give ourselves the permission, right, to forgive ourselves, to give ourselves grace for the things we didn't know at the time and we wish we did, but now we can use that to help others. So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like this could be such an extended cut conversation, but I know you've got all the things going on. You're in the middle of so many exciting projects, and I want to respect, the time frame. But any final words or final advice before I wrap up with today's Briism?
My final words is that if you are in debt right now, I really encourage everyone to understand that so many changes can happen in a year, right? When you start to set your mind to creating a new vision for yourself, to taking control over your situation, to beginning to like understand like your different options, and so much can happen in a year. So I think that giving yourself grace right now, forgiving the past, and like moving into like what your ideal financial future would look like is like my hope for everyone listening today is that you know yeah, so much can happen in a year, and I've seen it firsthand in the community. Like people have made incredible changes. So yeah, thank you so much for having this discussion and for opening up this conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing more like throughout the upcoming weeks, and hearing more interviews that you bring on. And yeah, thank you so much, Bree.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure, Tanya. Like just the fact that you've been such a loyal member of the Prosperity Tribe now for going on 3 years. Like I can't believe it. I remember you first were introduced by Leeson. Shout out Leeson, TPP's former advisor, who's also in the Bay Area. And when we were doing our 35 to free conferences and just trying to still make the most of being inside during quarantine, I'm just so grateful for how this has spilled over and lent itself to these sorts of conversations and just staying in tribe and community with each other. So great conversation. Can't wait to have you back, I'm sure, in the future. And just to close off with my Briism for today, you just heard Tanya's wonderful advice in action, which is give it a year, give yourself grace. Mine is action has no expiration date. So, it's never too late to be what you're meant to become, right? I think we've got to just look forward optimistically and just start with where we are today and take one step at a time. So wonderful chatting with you. Happy Friday the 13th. Hopefully, this is the spookiest thing you'll have to deal with all day.
Oh, I love it. I did notice it was Friday the 13th, and I was like, you know what? It's okay. Yeah.
I was going to go to a Halloween party this evening, but it got canceled. So I'm like,
Oh, no.
oh, well, next
We're to
year.
look for something spooky to do. Yeah.
That is spooky enough. All right. Well, thank you. So great talking to you. Have an awesome weekend. And thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next week.
Okay.